Corruption in the Capitol. Anyone surprised? Death toll from illegals. Redistricting turnabout is fair play. This is Dr. David D. Shine for Saving America with my own take on key stories from this past week focused on politics and business. And it's been another wall-to-wall week. Dem's shutdown stunt appears to have backfired as the long government shutdown continued, which was totally needless since the CR continued the bloated Biden-Harris budget. Something interesting happened. The Dems are getting the well-deserved blame. In prior shutdowns, the GOP usually takes the hit due to the slopstream media's biased coverage and the gullible public. This time, the public is getting that the only thing that is keeping the government closed is a handful of Democratic senators. Even far-left operations like CNN have admitted that this is the Dems' fault. The tension in our air traffic control system itself should have been enough for Chucky to wise up and restart the government funding. However, a government union with 800,000 members told the Dems to smarten up and get things rolling again. And polls are showing that the public is getting it. The Dems are clearly at fault. The cover story is that the Dems want $1.5 trillion in additional spending, a good chunk of which would go to benefits for illegals. The word is out that this and 80% of the public is opposed to this type of funding. Further, many of us slave in salaried positions to get our health insurance. Therefore, there's not much sympathy for the minority of Americans who do not have health coverage. Note that the Dems are arguing for continuing extra subsidies for Obamacare that were put in effect during COVID. That's right, 4 years ago. Again, Americans are waking up to the giveaways here. A huge cutoff was November 1 when SNAP benefits were not funded. SNAP primarily benefits the Democrat base. Virtually all of us have that figured out now. Frankly, I cannot believe that a full 10% of Americans need help with supplemental food benefits. How is that program being administered to make sure that a great deal of this is not being given to those who do not qualify, like illegals? I have a strong suggestion. End federal SNAP benefits. This should never have been a federal program. I want federal taxes cut and let the states handle this for the residents of their own states. I bet they would be a lot more careful in administering the money if it was all state money. We here in Texas pay plenty of taxes, and the state can afford to feed the legitimately deserving of such benefits. The same story should apply for Medicaid. Major Canadian miscue. I have Canadian relatives in my family tree and have made a good handful of visits to our northern neighbors. It's a beautiful country with beautiful people. They have suffered for over a decade with the results of a failed administration. Sadly, Trump shot his mouth off about Canada becoming an American state. That went over like the proverbial lead balloon in Canada. In fact, the country was trending conservative, and the Canadians were so upset at the Trump rhetoric that they surged to a loser liberal. Negotiations between Trump and the Canadians have not gone smoothly since Trump took office. Reciprocal tariffs have been bounced back and forth. It did look like things were finally getting on track. Then, Ontario Province Premier Doug Ford foolishly ran an ad from his provincial government in the USA with a clip of President Reagan speaking about free trade. The message being that Trump's tariffs, on Canada at least, were not in keeping with the approach of the popular American president. The obvious problem was that Reagan's speech said the opposite. The clip was taken out of context. Canada has not engaged in fair trade with the USA for decades. That is exactly why Trump started the tariff war with Canada. In turn, Trump called off pending Canadian negotiations. I expect that the dust will settle and things will get back on track soon. However, the ad was taken down as soon as Trump's reaction let the provincial head know that he had made a big error. At the same time, lefty Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is talking tough with little to help his cause. Hat in hand would be a better strategy. See our buddy over in the Ukraine about that one. That's right. Bill Gates changes his tune on climate change. My audience can predict that I'm not a big fan of Bill Gates or most of the West Coast techie establishment. He jumped into the headlines last week by declaring climate change will not lead to humanity's demise. Hey, I knew that decades ago, and I'm not even a billionaire. Why the general public would care about Gates' opinions on things other than computer software is unclear to me. The fact is that what most of us observe is called weather, not climate change. Yes, weather changes over time. Humans have only been keeping accurate weather records for just over 150 years. The Earth is billions of years old, so a tiny bit of data is being extrapolated well beyond any rational point. Heck, the entire middle of the United States at one time was a vast ocean. We know dinosaurs roamed well into the Arctic Circle. So there was a time when there was no ice there. On the other hand, there was a period from 1550 to 1850 when temperatures were cooler, and it was called the Little Ice Age. There were severe droughts in places, and Ireland famously had a famine. The point is that the earth is constantly changing regardless of humans. I want to underscore that the focus needs to be on real pollution, not imagined pollution. Smart people know the difference. Around the world, some countries are taking care of their environment or working toward that, and others are trashing it rapidly. We know that the CCP, for instance, is building coal-fired power plants at a rapid rate. I doubt they come anywhere near meeting U.S. environmental standards. We cannot go fossil fuel free in the next decade. I do predict that we will be able to do so by 2050 for most applications. The Mafia and sport betting scandals hit. You know, I'm not a sports fan. I know from the news if the local team is winning or losing. I know if the local college is doing well. That is all I need to know. Salaries in both college and pro sports are out of control. Further, when these overpampered and overpaid cats disrespect Americans, that pretty much closed the deal for me. Recently, I've interviewed a couple sports writers who authored interesting historical books. Happy to do that. While on the topic of sports, I did want to mention that I'm astounded to hear that the NFL has the anti-American whack job Bad Bunny as the halftime show at the Super Bowl for 2026. Not a problem for me as I'm boycotting the NFL entirely. However, I wonder how much of an audience Turning Point USA will attract with its counter halftime show. Now we hear that current pro basketball coach and a current pro basketball player who reportedly makes $26 million a year were accused of engaging in sports betting activities. I sure hope that's not true. The legal process is now pending. There was a medical scandal that I reported on over the summer with over about 300 people arrested. Many were doctors and nurses. These are well-paid professionals. Why would they engage in such actions? I asked the same question about those associated with pro sports. The money is vast already. Why compromise yourself for a few bucks? Well, the long-running FBI investigation produced more news. It turns out that some high-stakes poker games were also being rigged. The details of the rigging, from high-tech card readers to an X-ray poker table, makes for good headlines. I'm less concerned about that, but more concerned that these activities are allegedly tied to the Italian Mafia. That's right, folks, La Cosa Nostra. My goodness, we are dealing with TDA and drug gangs. I thought the Mafia was simply the subject of classic movies and the old TV show The Sopranos so far. About 30 people have been arrested and charged for these scandals. Will be interesting to see how it all turns out. Trump favorite President Javier Milei won another term in Argentina. His reformist approach is something that Trump has hoped to accomplish here in the U.S. Apparently, things have been so bad for so long, the voters have figured out that promising something for nothing will not work. Hopefully, it bodes well for the off-year elections in New Jersey and Virginia in this country. The U.S. was involved as Trump spoke publicly in favor of Milei. Attracting criticism was the $20 billion swap of dollars for Argentine pesos to boost their economy at this time. The U.S. also bought another $20 billion worth of pesos in the marketplace. I want to underscore that just as I wish Trump had not spoken about making Canada a state or started fights with Brazil or Colombia, we should not interfere in the internal affairs of countries that are allies like Argentina. We have plenty to say grace over here at home. Business climate in the U.S. continues mixed. On the positive side, inflation is about 3%, although the target is supposedly 2%. The Fed just lowered the base rate another quarter point. However, mortgage rates went up, not down. While it may vary around the country, egg prices are down to normal, and it seems that there is a gas war brewing with some of the lowest gas prices I've seen in years. Just announces that Social Security recipients will get a 2.8% COLA, that's cost of living adjustment, for 2026. Balancing this news are some major job layoffs. For instance, Target will eliminate 1,800 corporate jobs in a restructuring move. That is 1,000 laid off and 800 jobs will remain unfilled. Reports are that Target is not winning the retail war relative to other chain competitors like Walmart. Tough times for consumers is partially blamed for this. Amazon will lay off an incredible 30,000 employees. UPS will lay off an even more incredible 48,000 employees. These numbers are stunning. Some of this is blamed on overhiring during COVID while deliveries were king. Others blame the use of AI and robotics to do those many tasks today. Third death at Walt Disney World in just 10 days. Well, maybe it's not the happiest place on earth. The Orange County, Florida Medical Examiner's Office confirmed the death of a guest at the Contemporary Resort Hotel, but no cause of death or specific timing was provided. I guess you can do that when you're the big dog in Orlando. There was also a suicide of a woman referred to as a Disney superfan. A man died at the Fort Wilderness Resort due to an apparent medical issue. I have been boycotting Disney since they went woke and abandoned their focus on family-friendly entertainment. Shopping away. I recently reported on the bankruptcy of the Joann fabric stores. Well, 12 of their locations are now opening as Burlington outlet stores. Burlington reportedly bought out the leases of 45 of the former Joann stores. The 12 is the first batch of them to open. I find this interesting since I think of the Joann stores as much smaller than the typical Burlington outlet stores. In 2023, after Bed Bath & Beyond went bankrupt, Burlington obtained 44 of their stores. Speaking of big retailers, Walmart announced it will close its stores for both Thanksgiving and Christmas. My guess is that this is a money saver as they do not have to pay extra to have employees in those stores for those two holidays. 90% of adults may have CKM syndrome. That was a new one for me. According to the American Heart Association, CKM syndrome stands for cardiovascular kidney metabolic syndrome. It's a health condition that includes heart disease, kidney disease, diabetes, and obesity. These might seem like separate issues, but they're actually closely connected. When one system is affected, it can make the others worse, creating a cycle that puts your health at serious risk. When these systems, heart, kidneys, and metabolism are not working properly, it can lead to a multi-system disorder, meaning that more than one part of the body is not working properly. This can cause serious conditions like heart failure, irregular heartbeat, heart attacks and clogged arteries, stroke, poor circulation in the legs and feet. The Heart Association says that the earlier CKM syndrome is recognized, the more can be done to prevent or slow down the damage. Lifestyle changes, medications, and coordinated care from your healthcare team can make a real difference, Americans. It's no secret that Americans have not been taking care of their health. This is Dr. David D. Shine. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.